So you've got your chuck eye, which is a reflection of your ribeye and where that muscle runs out. It's about 3 or 4 inches in. Really great for a college kid to have a chuck eye steak versus a ribeye and save about $2 to $3 a pound. And it actually has traditionally a little bit more marbling than even your ribeye just because it's closer in to the head of the animal. But a great item as far as roasting or even doing a value-added ground beef. One of the trendy, popular things, and one of my favorite things to do on the weekends, brisket. So if you were to do a traditional bone-in brisket, which nobody ever does, and I've seen them about 10 times in my life, this would be a full brisket. Most people get a 120 decal off, which is all this stuff that's in my hands would be considered the decal, leaving a 120 brisket. Mario's got one that's from the Gold Canyon as well. And then within this brisket, you have a point half versus the flat half. And if you look and you can see, typically your flat half is a little bit leaner on marbling and your point's a little fattier. That's why for burnt ends, traditionally everybody uses a brisket point. And if you're being judged for being unhealthy because you order the fatty brisket at Rudy's, you're actually doing the right thing because that has the right LDL cholesterol and is actually good for your heart. So then on the other side of that, you've got the pectoral muscle, which runs out and is just where that brisket runs out in the carcass. Another great thing for stir fry, dicing beef cutlets, and it can go interchangeably between that and rib lifter based on price point. So then this is where the shoulder gets really fun, and you have some really great muscles on one side of it and some really tough ones on the other. So you'd pull out your blade bone, and you've got your chuck tender or your mock tender, the catfish muscle if you've ever skinned a catfish. But the reason that it's called a mock tender is there's this opaque connective tissue that gets really tough and chewy if you were to just cut this into steaks and throw them on the grill without any enhancement. Now, if you've ever bought the two tenderloins that are bacon wrapped for like $7, more than likely it was this wrapped in bacon with some enhancements that made it tender. On the other side of that blade bone, you've got your top blade or your flat iron, which your top blade's the full piece. Your flat iron's going in here and cutting in between the connective tissue or this opaque connective tissue on both sides and butterflying that off to make a flat iron fillet, and that's the number 2 most tender cut in the whole carcass. Then on the other side of that, you've got your shoulder tender, which is another item that can be used for a fill-in for a cheaper tender, but it eats a lot better than your chuck tender. Then what we would do if we took off that top blade, most of your tears would already be removed, is you'd have your clawed heart, and that is actually the 5th most tender depending on what stuff you look at for tenderness and muscles in the carcass. But overall, an item that can be used for many different things.